Okay, we'd like to welcome everybody to Fluid's Content Marketing Seminar. Their webinar, we're excited to have Jonathan Johnson, who comes with us to us today with a wealth of experience from the More Good Foundation. We want to get started with some very brief introductions. I'm Phil Case, Managing Director and Partner at Fluid Advertising, with Dustin, who oversees our digital team and focuses quite a bit on conversion and content optimization. He'll be speaking to us as well. Jonathan, do you want to introduce yourself too?
Well, just let me begin by saying hello. Appreciate the invitation to be with you today. This is a topic that's both interesting to me and something that we spend a lot of time in our analysis of and deployment of. So I'm excited to visit with you a bit further about it today. I've served as the Executive Director of the More Good Foundation for the past 8 years. We were created to assist the LDS Church, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in addressing some of the challenges they faced on the internet and in the media, challenges more specifically that face them relative to reputation management, branding, market awareness, and misconception. So within that wheelhouse, excuse me, we've had to both come to understand more completely how to use these digital technologies to address those challenges that face us, and as well as seeking solutions for them. So out of that, I've also spent a fair amount of my time advising large and small organizations on how they can use these same tools to accomplish the same. So thank you for giving me the time, Phil, and I'm grateful to be with you.
Wonderful. And Dustin's going to give us a little bit of instruction in regards to following us on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be live tweeting throughout the webinar at #FluidWebinarSeries. You can also reach either of our two companies at GetFluid and at MG Foundation, respectively. So at any time you guys can talk to us, and we'll get you a response throughout the webinar.
Wonderful.
Let's go ahead and jump into it. We really wanted to get you guys thinking about content from the mindset of how to introduce this with your teams. And I think that this is part of the strategy that is often misunderstood, or at least not addressed fully, and it can control how you want to develop each piece, from the size of the piece to the in-depth analysis of the topic you're discussing, just all kinds of different things. And so I think it's really important to kind of put yourself in the right mindset. And we'll go over just a couple of the things that I think help you get into that zone. First is just consider that people are different. The buying modalities matrix I show here, it shows just the different types of people. Some move really fast, some move really slow. Other individuals are logical thinkers, and others are emotional thinkers. And so you almost need a specific content strategy for each of these groups. If not the ability to have that strategy for each group, you really need to analyze your clients for what kind of buying they are in. Basically, just want you guys to try to get your minds around who buys from us and how much information they need to know. And again, that's going to control if you're offering quick snippets and quick facts with bullet points, or if you're doing full long case studies where people need a lot more information to advance them through the funnel. And that kind of leads into just thinking about your actual sales funnel. And so I think this is really important as you create content. People get so hung up in let's have a blog, or let's have a white paper, or let's put out this video, but they don't really completely understand how that fits into the nurture cycle for getting their client from introduction to actual purchase. And so I show here the road to conversion, and as you can see, oftentimes people come in on an ad, they hit a landing page, they fill out a form, and then some type of email drip campaign begins on them. You can replace the ad with, a content piece, a video, whatever it is, but you can consider that as your trigger point. What is the trigger point that brought them in? And then what are appropriate content pieces that you should be delivering afterwards to get them through the sales funnel? And so I really think that people don't include sales funnel when they talk about content strategy, but for everybody out there, I would encourage you to do so and have an exercise with your team where you define what content pieces you need.
It's interesting. I know that we're showing a screen of the Apple Watch there for a moment. And I consider even on Saturday night, I was with my wife at a Apple store and looking at the Apple Watch and trying it on. And, you know, I'm probably still a year out from wanting to purchase one, but I'm beginning kind of that consultative process now, you know, thinking about that, going back to that buying modality slide. You know, it's going to be a little bit more of a slow, logical process for me. There is emotion involved, and so some of these kind of cross barriers within this matrix and these various quadrants. But as we think about, you know, decision for me personally to buy a consumer product that I don't really need but want versus a software that is a must for our business as we make management decisions. And as Dustin shared in this next slide regarding, you know, content driving the path and the type of information that I need, and with multiple decision makers involved in an organization, it is important that you almost need to address the same solution multiple times with multiple audiences and probably different ways. The way you speak to a CEO versus the way you speak to someone in finance or somebody who's the actual user of that software. And so, you know, B2B, B2C on a consumer versus business perspective makes a difference when it comes to content. And even personally, I've noticed a unique you know, how I begin to work through problem solutions and opportunities, whether it affects my own personal wallet or that of our organization.
And I think John's going to speak to trends in some of the next portions.
Thank you, and that was a great segue. Dustin's touched on a couple of things that I think are very valid. I want to highlight some of my remarks more specifically to touch on audiences. And do you know your audiences, or do we think we know our audiences? And so I've incorporated this slide that illustrates two watches. Now, I sat with my daughter last night and I said, what is this picture of, the one that's on the left, the picture of the pocket watch? I said, what is that? And she said, it's a clock. I said, no, but more specifically, what is it? She says, I don't know, it's a clock. And she had no context or frame of reference for a pocket watch. She hadn't seen one. This was new to her. And on the right, of course, you see the new Apple Watch. And as I've tagged this with a quote below, would you describe today's multifunctional phones and watches the way you would describe a single function pocket watch or rotary phone? This came out of an experience that I had with my children who were a few years ago when we bought our younger children iPod Touch devices. And this was on a Christmas morning when they opened up their iPod Touch device, and they continued throughout the day to refer to them as their phones. And I, as their father, felt to correct them and help them understand that, no, this wasn't a phone, it was an iPod Touch device. And they said, well, no, it is a phone. And I thought it was because they were confusing the similarities that existed in the shape of my phone and the functionalities of my phone, and that they had simply made a mistake. But to them, what occurred to me was that a phone was much more than just a single function tool. They have redefined the term phone. Their respective age group or generation views a phone as more than just something like a rotary phone that has a single function or single purpose. To them, a phone was much broader. It had internet connectivity. It had applications that they could download. It also, to my surprise, when I said, no, a phone is something you dial and reach out to someone else for two-way communication or conversation. They said, well, we have that. And they had loaded or downloaded an application that allowed them to call over the internet their friends. And so I learned something from my children that day, that I didn't understand them or their audience well enough. And that some things that I thought I held a great understanding relative to, or that I was an expert on what a phone did, I was taught that there's a broader definition of a phone, just as there is a watch. I think that the young people of today look at and often ask the question, why would you wear a watch? Apple seizing on that, Google seizing on that, and dozens of others are looking at multifunctional watches because simply the idea of wearing jewelry isn't appealing enough any longer. It has to do more. And so I want to start a discussion around, do you know your audience? And does your message match their needs? Do you understand that they have needs and what those needs are specifically? In the work that I do in advising the LDS Church, we also look at general messaging from a conventional perspective as well as from a digital perspective, and how are we doing it? And the way in which the church has proselytized over the years has been one where they teach the church's doctrine at the outset, instead of teaching the fruit of that doctrine, which is often far more appealing to the person who's receiving the message than maybe the messenger who's offering it. And so we may well look right past what we could offer someone because we're so hung up on promoting a product or a service instead of how that product or service may be more helpful in providing a solution for them. So it's important that we understand what these challenges are that exist within our audience, or more importantly, that we understand that there may be a variety of audiences and we don't want to leave a particular audience out. The next slide, slide number 8, when I advanced, did that advance for the rest of you?
We
Dustin?
see it on ours.
Okay, great. It says, today's authority, yesterday's non-authority. What I've discovered in my own research, both in the consulting that I do for firms as well as in the work that I do for the organization, is that today's authority is the unofficial voice. It's not the spokesperson for the brand, for the product, but is the advocate for the brand or the product. If we look historically and we take a 10-year capture of where, or even 15 years, it's better if we go back 15 years, and look at who we trusted for organizational messaging or trusted for messaging in general, we trusted the government, generally speaking. We trusted religion, generally speaking, higher ed, and the conventional press media. Within 15 years, we have lost trust with most of those organizations. And we've turned to a model that we trust people who are not experts, but are experts in simply having test-driven or owned a product. Brand advocates, people who are leaving testimonials in social places, and it's become a part of our sociality. We're slow to purchase something. We wouldn't go to Amazon without reading reviews. We wouldn't reserve a vacation spot without having first visited TripAdvisor or Yelp or a myriad of other places. And so in your content marketing and in your content creation, be thoughtful, because the tendency may well be to be overly organizational, overly authoritative, and thereby displace some of the authenticity and the relevance that people are looking for. Provide and prepare content that can be shareable, as we'll talk about in just a moment. But again, consider your audience. We don't need to be professorial, and any of you who've attended and been in higher education know what I mean. We need to create content that is sincere. Professors, and I would add maybe attorneys or other experts in fields, gain a lot of their credibility by being verbose, flowery in the content that they create, professorial. And the publication of those works that they create, their research and such, is generally very narrow in scope. But historically, the way content marketing, before the word content marketing became a bit cliche, was done in this way. It was done trying to be overly authoritative in the content that we create. And if you look at the experts in the field today, those who are really doing well with this, oftentimes you'll find that the content that they're creating isn't overt. The content they're creating is not brand heavy. It's often brand light. They're creating emotion. They're creating an experience that touches on how their product or service can be a solution to people. And sometimes we want so badly to just say we're the best when that may not be factually correct, or here's why we're the best, that we miss the audience and what they're looking for and interested in. So be careful and cautious that we do not swing the pendulum too far and become superior in our way of thinking, or that works for us won't work for someone else. I mentioned this a moment ago. What is your audience's challenges? Do we understand them? Does the product or solution address those challenges? And does it not address those challenges? Are we fair in our assessment of our product or service, or are we over-promising in our product or service? And it's okay at times to pass on to somebody else. It's okay even at times with a competitor to acknowledge that a competitor may have a strength, because you become more believable as you express how this will help, but you don't have to over-embellish it in the creation of your content. And does the messaging tell a story about the product rather than the solution? As we talk about content marketing, the two places that I would suggest you start within your businesses, and I'm guessing your businesses are from A to Z. I don't know exactly a slice of all of who are participating today, but I'm guessing that it's a broad spectrum. As you're developing a content market, the content for content marketing, we need to have, as a first step in Content Marketing 101, what is your message strategy? And do you have a messaging architecture? So often we think we understand well who we are as a brand, who we are as a product. But if you ask the 3 or 4 of the top executives of the brand, they're going to tell you 3 or 4 different things. If you were to ask the people who are creating the content, those in your marketing and sales team, they're going to ask you, or they're going to suggest that the brand is something very different than the engineering and R&D group. So it's important that as within your organizations, you go through, and you can do this with Fluid's help, you go through a marketing strategy with specific content architecture, that your message is architected such that the intern or the CEO understands the message the same way, that they're on the same page, and that the content that is created, whether it's going to be an evergreen article that's going to live on a blog or on a website indefinitely and become authoritative on the topic, or whether it's going to be a blog post where you're citing and quoting a myriad of other people, the message needs to be succinct. It needs to be clear and understood. And more importantly, the audience, you need to do enough tests that the audience is receiving the message the way that you believe you're presenting the message. And sometimes there's a disconnect and a dissonance instead of a harmonious resonance. And we can do that through a variety of testing of messaging. But we need to make sure that everyone in the organization is creating the content with that message in mind. Now, having an architecture and a strategy is worthless without having the content. You need to try it. You need to create content and create a variety of content. And the way we do that is creating strong content. The average attention span of a human now, thanks to Vine and Snapchat and YouTube, and it used to be we would watch a 15-minute video on YouTube, and then it dropped to, we were suggesting in our advice to others that they don't exceed 3 to 4 minutes, and now if it's not 6 to 20 seconds, we've lost them, which should funnel its way back in the conversations you're having about the sort of content you're creating for your brand, your product or service. Is it reaching an audience in a powerful way, and is it brief? Brevity, not professorial. Brevity is going to be very important. If you look at what is doing very well in content that is shareable, there are listograms. And a listogram is top 10 reasons for X, top 5 reasons for Y. Infographics, image quotes, or memes, things that people can get the picture, get the idea in a short snippet. Now, that's not to say that good copy or copyright or content isn't important. It is. Having blog pieces and having evergreen articles on websites are important. But today, we must be creating shareable content, especially as we're looking for brand advocates who they themselves can be your best salespeople. We need to make sure that the content fits within the attention span.
Jonathan, I think you're so right about that. I mean, oftentimes we overlook brevity so much, and we feel as though we want to get the entire story into the article or the video or whatever it is. But oftentimes on kind of a second look, there is a way to actually boil it down into a short and concise manner and then end with some type of call to action for where they are looking for, more results or learn more, where you can then deliver a longer piece of content. But it's, again, important to understand where they are at in the funnel to how long that piece of content is going to be. I think, Jonathan, you make a great point there. I appreciate that.
Thank you. And calls to action, as he just mentioned, CTAs are very important to have on your website, to have on your blog, to make sure that the sorts of calls to action may be subscription-based. It may be engage in social media by following, liking, linking, subscribing, etc. But be creative within your calls to action. Subscriptions, and you saw in this conversion funnel that emails that were presented by Dustin are important. So many people look at emails as though they're passé. They're the thing of the past. We don't do them. We're not interested in them. We're much more interested in simply the social realm. And email is a very social realm, but it has tremendous effectiveness in being able to have a call to action and then quantify the success of that call to action. Maybe the best right now. It also it can help you A/B test the sort of content you're creating within an email campaign. What is the title? What's getting people to open it? Are they responding to the call to action within the email? And then within your subscriptions, look at subscriptions a little bit differently. If you look at major companies today, big companies like Nike or others, they have apps now that are subscription-based. And what that app is allowing them to do is be a little less overt in their content marketing strategy in the conventional sense, because they know everything about the behavior of the runner who's running on their shoes. They know how long the person runs. They know where the person lives and where the person runs. They know how many people that person is following. And you have other subscription models that are outside of the conventional box. We think of a subscription as just being an RSS feed. It's so much more than that. But subscriptions are great ways that you can use calls to action to help you refine the sort of content that you're creating in your overall marketing strategies. Thank you, Dustin, for reminding me of some of those thoughts. I've entitled it Content Marketing on the Shoulders of Others, and the reason I have is because when you look at what many people are doing, I watched a commercial the other day, and I wasn't sure if it was for Apple, if it was for Subaru, or if it was for a food company. But I watched as they had leveraged other popular brands and made their brand a little less in your face. And I've advised a company called Blendtec now for several years. And Blendtec won a Clio Award for marketing as only one of two. It was Apple and Blendtec that have received this award, at least to date, that weren't marketing companies. And they won it because of the content marketing strategy that was the Will It Blend series that some of you may be familiar with on YouTube. The Will It Blend series, in short, illustrates the power and effectiveness of their blender by being very destructive to things that are very popular. So the video I was going to show you had over nearly 18 million views on this one specific video. After the iPad came out, they put the iPad in the blender, blended up the iPad, and received over 18 million views. Now, it really wasn't in your face. It was simply, this is the Blendtec Total Blender, and we're going to blend the new iPad. Well, it was a combination of the destructive nature. It was unique in how they had created these little vignettes. It was something that people were very interested in with the iPad, more interested in the iPad than they were in the blender, but it blended all of it together. No pun intended, but that's what happened. And the outcome of that was this wildly successful campaign that is called Will It Blend. And they're continuing it. They just did a blend of the iPhone 6. Now, I wanted to include this video just to illustrate that as you're looking at your content marketing strategy, so often we try to recreate the wheel. We want to say, we have something no one else has, or we are better than everyone else, or our strategy has to be uniquely different from everyone else. And the reality is Facebook was built on MySpace, Snapchat on the deficiencies of Facebook, but nevertheless on the momentum of Facebook. And it's why it was purchased by Facebook, because it filled a void that they didn't have, and it did it better than Facebook could. But it used the momentum of other platforms to develop credibility for itself. So as you're analyzing the sort of content you want to create and you want to share, look at what others have done successfully, maybe even your competitors. Look at other products that might be complementary to yours, that bring credibility to yours, maybe because they do something you do not. If you look at large big box stores, I spend a lot of time doing do-it-yourself projects and go to Home Depot and to Lowe's. And if you go online and you go to YouTube, there's huge do-it-yourself sections. In the beginning, these were not embraced by Lowe's and Home Depot because they were perceived as threats to some of the solutions that they could offer within their own offering. And yet they saw that if they embraced it to a degree, which seemed counterintuitive, and encouraged, yes, they're a do-it-yourself, that's what they are, but encouraged services that maybe they also offered in a scaled-down form. We see this often in apps online, a freemium version and a premium version. This idea of offering something to a group where you give them a solution has a tremendous resonance with people. People love to feel reciprocity from a brand that they like, and it's the fastest way to develop brand advocacy is to offer them something and recognize them for something that they're doing. So you've seen a lot of these organizations, big box stores, embracing this new philosophy and shifting to encouraging that the content that they create still is there as a service and an offering for people, but it may be built on the shoulders of what other people are doing, or accepting that maybe by not being everything to everyone is okay if they hit it out of the park where their solutions exist.
And we want to talk about that a little bit more. Jonathan has some excellent tools that he wants to present, and how, as a brand, you can have those who are potential brand advocates or purchasers of products that you or your company have developed. We're going to come back to that in a moment. We want to be on from a time perspective. There's a few other things we want to cover topically. So, Jonathan, I might jump in for a moment and talk about some of the content marketing channels. And we, with these channels, as Jonathan's talked about, kind of this higher level discussion in regards to, you know, how do you engage your audience, understanding your audience, and knowing the type of content that will move people. We want to talk a little bit of the tactical side for a moment. You'll notice that of these channels here, some of the content marketing channels allow you to create content, such as YouTube and you know, Flickr and others. Some of these channels allow you to optimize and monitor content, you know, analytics, SEO, etc. There's engagement. Jonathan mentioned Facebook, of course, LinkedIn, Blogger, and others. There's the promotion of content, and again, some of these cross over into others, but you know, whether that's affiliate, whether that's ads, direct marketing, but clearly having a channel that once content's created and optimized to really push that out, and then ultimately discussing that content. And so, you know, as you consider your content, you need to consider as it's deployed, what channel or category of channels can you leverage to really reach your audience, and that's going to really depend on the type of audience you do have and the type of product and business that you really offer. So Dustin's going to talk about a couple of these specific channels that we want to highlight. And
we just want to go over them kind of high level. Jonathan touched on this, that email has gone kind of passe. I love hearing that because I use my email constantly all day long, and if you ever talk to a time manager, they just tell you to get out of your email. And so apparently nobody's using this, and yet it's taking up 90% of our days. So obviously, I guess what I'm saying is I disagree with that heavily, but there is one thing I do look at email as, and it's kind of two-pronged, meaning that email is a distribution channel for content as much as it is an actual content channel. I think that email can be the best aggregator of your good content that you have out there. It can now deliver real-time statistics. You can put in direct surveys. You can have GIFs that are actually motion graphic. Not only that, but embedding video, and then just aggregating all the blogs and different content links that you do. So email is just so functional for getting that information out to the right groups. And then using segmentation, you can do a lot to make sure that you are delivering the same type of unique content to the visitors who want it in their inbox, just the same as when they're doing a web search. But I also think that email is its own content channel because you send personalized messages to people. And I think we overlook this a lot. There's nothing more valuable than a personalized message saying, hey, take a look at this, or just hello. And those messages can be less than one full sentence if you want them to be. But that is a piece of content. And so I really think, again, as we go back into that funnel, where does it hit the sales group? And if it does, what kind of content pieces do they have access to? They don't always need a white paper to send, but maybe they need some instruction on how long the email they should send. Is back to John's point about brevity. And so I think you need to look at email as the two-pronged approach of an aggregator and a content distribution channel, as well as a unique content channel.
I couldn't agree more.
The next is infographics and video. Visuals get results. Again, John and we're kind of talking a lot about these things together here, but video is one of the most shared channels that there is, if not the most shared channel that there is, and it also gets more attention, meaning that if you have a landing page, you might have that 7 seconds, but with a video you can capture somebody and you can keep their interest for 45 seconds, a minute, 3 minutes. Depending on how good your content is, the longer the video can be. But this is one area where a lot of the attention span can be, you can actually flip it based on how good the content actually is. And people like to consume video, they like to share video, and so video is a very useful content channel. Additionally, infographics are really great. People love to see the lists. They love to see, visual representations of a process flow. A great thought here is we like to create kind of longer infographics, and as you get into the infographic, you're thinking your process is very complex, and it has all these steps to it, and you don't want to show somebody this big, long, 1 or 2 sheet infographic. We've kind of played with this thought and have had success by creating that graphic, but then cutting it up into smaller, more digestible pieces. And so you're able to spend your time focused on one content piece, but in the end you can chop it up and you can send it off onto social media platforms. You can use it as statistics in a blog post. You can just do a lot with it. And so I think what a main takeaway for infographics and videos would be is what is their use, and does it have to be the full piece? Can you take a 30-second clip of a video from a larger 3-minute video and use that somewhere? And so one piece turns into 4 or 5. And so just general shareability and the ability to increase the amount of content you have through smaller pieces.
And I think that repurposing piece is quite important, and considering your audience, that there is a little bit more of the longer consultative type, when people are further down the funnel and really trying to make a decision. But as Dustin mentioned, a lot of that can be a little bit shorter segments, small strokes, where we can engage them even top of the funnel with that same content. We have a few more slides to go here, and then we're going to wrap up here in just a moment.
The next is white paper, case studies. We just want to touch on this. People feel like they need this, and they really do, actually. I mean, when you're getting into some of the more expensive purchases, people need to see how your product or service is going to work and that it's going to deliver the results. And most of the time, the only way to do that is off the credibility of a current client through a case study or in a research-based white paper. But again, I just want you to consider, what is your organization? What is your sales process? What is the cost of your product? Do people want to go through a 10 to 100 page white paper? Maybe not. So it might not be right for you. Think about who you are and come back to Jonathan's point, who is your audience?
If I could interject one thought, I have a client who's also a benefactor who's a fairly significant audio manufacturer. And we were discussing some of their challenges, their marketing challenges, because they're not in big box stores and they don't do direct sale, direct to the consumer selling. They sell through prominent installers. And he was having a hard time getting his emails to be opened by their clientele. And we had suggested to him that he try exactly what Dustin's just suggested to you. Have a title in your email, send it out to your mailing list that is educational in nature, and have a case study where you're comparing various products, 2 or 3, and you're simplifying for your audience steps that they are accustomed to taking, but take more time and energy. And what we need to remember is we live in a world today where we want things instantly. We are consumers of instant gratification, and we want things to be the lowest barrier to entry or greatest ease of functionality. And if you can provide for them something that both addresses a query that they may have, but does so in such a way where it simplifies the process for them, it's a win, and you become an expert. I have a friend who is the founder of a very prominent digital advertising and marketing group called HubSpot. And we were speaking together back in Boston, and as I talked with him, what I noticed that he was doing differently than other people was in his own messaging, he was highlighting other experts. He himself wasn't always the expert, although he's viewed as a foremost expert in this field. He was highlighting, I really liked what this person had to say about this. Think of that in the scope of your business. If you can find other testimonials to speak about the power of your product or your service, whatever your offering might be, and be deferential at times to defer to what some other expert might have to say, and this is a great way to do it, I think you're going to find great success.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is. You just have to, look at your company and find out what content is best for you. There's no cookie cutter way to do it, and we're here to give you high level examples, but the example Jonathan just gave you is ideal for you needing to know your audience and deliver the right choice. If you want to speak to the social here? Or Jonathan, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I came to know Eric Qualman by reputation several years ago when he first came out with his book, Socialnomics. And because of the work that we do, I had a few people saying, hey, you might be interested in reading this book. And so I purchased it, and I thought it was tremendous. And Eric Qualman has really tried to stay ahead of the curve relative to the way social media and networking have the significant role that they played then, and more importantly, the role that they'll play in the future, and it's increased significance. So the statistics that I'm referring to on this particular slide, you'll have to find in the video that I've included that will be sent to you after the webinar. Watch that. Take the time to watch it. It's 3 minutes long. It's very, very powerful touch points that should help you both as you discuss a message architecture and the delivery of your content. So it highlights the emergence of social media, but more specifically, how social is working in today's sociology, and including marketing, dating, all kinds of things that may affect your organization.
Exactly. We just want to follow up on a last couple of things in regards to tracking all of the efforts of content, distribution, promotion. Again, it's just noise, and it really doesn't matter if we're monitoring and adapting content based on that feedback. The next slide, Dustin, here, just highlights, as you send a campaign, users click on it, they begin to interact with that, both from an analytics perspective, and there's a lot of other, from blogs, the videos, the email, the social. We want to be certain that we know the effectiveness of the content. The type of content you're distributing initially somewhat might be a subjective guess from how you perceive your audience to be. But as you progress in this kind of content value cycle and are really honed in on, from an analytics perspective, what your users behaviorally are interested in, what they're digesting, consuming, you'll find there'll be a wealth of knowledge that not only you can glean, but data that will drive the continuation of future content creation and promotion. So this life cycle of continuous improvement of content makes quite a difference as you do monitor it. And again, you'll find that both blogging from Google's perspective, video with YouTube Analytics, Vimeo, there's other software packages that allow you to have embedded call to actions for lead generations within videos hosted on your site. Emails, if you begin to segment those out and as you have click-throughs that are tracked, you'll know what campaigns are top performing and being able to set up channel attributions. And then, combining and integrating social with Google Analytics really gives you some top level comprehensive view of, everybody kind of coming through the funnel from social to your site to other purchases and consumption of content. So as we kind of go in summary here, just to recap briefly, be authentically authoritative. Sometimes you don't have to come off, as Jonathan said, as authoritative in that sense, but even a more casual conversation. Live where they live. Content always must be shareable. And again, be careful not to get stuck in the trends of the day that are quickly passed up by the trends of tomorrow, as Eric Qualman, has been able to do, and being able to stay in touch with those types of thought leaders. Again, knowing what your audience wants, you'll find that what audiences want are often, captured in the data based on their behavior, and understanding that. Messaging architecture, knowing who you're speaking with at what point of the sales funnel. Strategy without content, of course, is worthless. Having content that's appealing, that's interesting and digestible is what people are demanding today. Again, as you are able to have a content subscription model where people can subscribe to receive updates, whether that's via social or email or text, is highly lucrative in this space and can be worth tens of thousands of dollars as your followers of the subscription model aggregate and grow. And then as Jonathan talked about, being professorial and a little bit maybe too verbose or coming off as not willing to communicate to them on their level and their needs. And then Jonathan, I know we wanted to finish with building brand advocacy, and if you want to speak to that now, what we've talked about today, there's an excellent software platform that Jonathan and his team have begun to develop, and I think this would be an excellent time to be able to showcase that.
Great, thank you, Phil. And thank you again for joining us today. The thought that I want to share, before I just jump in, and I know we're short on time, so I'll be brief, is just to paint for you a philosophical shift. There has been a mindset that training the retail salesperson, and I don't want to misspeak, I'm not suggesting that training a retail salesperson to understand that which they're selling is bad. What I'm suggesting is if we get caught into a narrow way of thinking that is the best approach, or that we're leaving a group of our best salesmen out of being trained, we may be missing a real opportunity. Let me be more specific. We have recognized, again, back to today's authority, that the non-authority is the authority. The person who owns, as I indicated, the person who's test-driven a car, owns a vehicle, they have a lot more sway in the minds of the average consumer today than they once did. However, most brands or most companies have been slow to recognize the power that they possess as a brand advocate for them. And they've been slow to connect with them and to build a very real relationship, and maybe it's because they haven't considered it, maybe it's because they feel their brand is so big that their audience is too vast to get their arms around. Whatever the case might be, we feel that in almost every business, there are people who are loyal to the product or service that's offered. And those people who are brand loyal or product loyal or service loyal, who continually go back to the same tire group or the same lube place or buy the same coat. The reason they're loyal to North Face may be because of often is because of personal experience. But what caused them to purchase that jacket is often, especially in our day, because of social influence that surrounds them. So we have created a platform recognizing that people are hungry to understand and learn about messaging, about products. We've created a platform to encourage brand advocacy and to enable a brand or a product to present their message to their brand advocate in such a way that it could be easily received, internalized, that they can go through a process of illustrating their comprehension on a particular message or product, and then encouraging that brand advocate to become a brand ambassador or to continue to grow in their advocacy of that brand. And we've done so with a simple dashboarding process that allows an individual to come learn more about a product and then receive incentive for doing it, or at least acknowledgement and some sort of reciprocal benefit to the individual. Oftentimes, we dress and want to be like Tiger Woods, and we'll spend the money to go out and buy the brand that Tiger Woods wears and is sponsored by. We're spending a lot of money doing that, and we can look the part, but that brand does nothing back for us. They do little to recognize us for keeping Tiger Woods in their apparel. And so we feel like if that person who feels a very small fish in a big ocean, but nevertheless loves a product, has some sort of recognition from the brand and is brought in to feel more a part of a company or an organization, the brand will grow because that individual will have a greater desire and a tendency, and with this new dashboard, the opportunity of sharing through his social sphere those things that he's most passionate about. What we recognize is that the power of social network is really that. It's the network. It's the network of people who are trusted. They're pre-qualified. Remember that in your content strategy, that make sure the shareable media that you're providing to people, that you're following it up with tracking how that's been received. And then recognizing that the audiences that may already exist for you, those who are already believers in your brand, product, or offering, have friends who they trust. And as they begin to share your message, it becomes more authentic and it opens up to secondary audiences. So we've created what we've called Link LMS that allows people to come in and learn, take what they've learned, share to those that they've pre-qualified or gathered together through their social networking, and allows the organization to track how far-reaching that is and work it back into a conversion funnel, as Phil and Dustin spoke of. So if there's interest in looking at it further, we're working with Fluid on this in delivering it in this area, and we'd be happy to arrange, a phone call or a meeting if it's something you feel would be beneficial for your group.
And we have a presentation that Jonathan has shared with us. We will be sending that link out to each of our attendees today as well, so you guys will get that and be able to review it. It's a great product and something that, again, can push the ability to use content into conversion. And so we were big advocates of it and happy to give you guys that information. I think that is very much all the time we have today. I'll leave you with a couple of quick stats. Really interesting to what Jonathan just said about engaging the actual user. Is that 95% of B2B enterprise marketers use content marketing, while only 86 of B2C marketers use content marketing. Obviously, that just tells us there's an opportunity in the B2C world to engage them and to succeed through Jonathan's model of bringing in your users And then just lastly, 60% of marketers use content marketing on a weekly basis, and inbound marketing delivers 54% more leads into the marketing funnel than traditional. And the last one that I love, website conversion rate is nearly 6 times higher for content marketing adopters than non-adopters. And so this isn't just something we kind of want to talk about as a fun theory, but this is delivering results and is part of the new wave of where marketing is going to be going. And so we encourage everybody to get on board with it, and any assistance Fluid or the More Good Foundation can provide, we are happy to help you guys.
And we look forward to next month. We'll be on the 4th Tuesday, or the last Tuesday of the month at 11:30. We'll have our next webinar, details coming shortly, and we're excited to meet with you then. Hope you can make it a great week and can catch it from the holiday. Thanks.
Thanks
Jonathan?
Yes.
If you're still on, we did get a few questions come in. For those who want to stay on, if you want, would you want to take a moment and address those?
No, I'd happy to. That's great.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Let me pull these up for us. All right. The first question, and I'll have you answer this, Jonathan. I would imagine you have experience with it on both sides, but does a content marketing strategy take a lot of resources, and what are some of the ways to do content marketing without a large team?
Oh, that is a great, great question. Let me summarize it, pointing back to a couple of things that I mentioned beforehand. Content strategies can be very cost-intensive, but they don't need to be. If you sat down with your organization and went through a few exercises relative to the strategy itself in talking about the messaging, meaning what is your organization about? What does it represent? What does it stand for? What are the top 5 things that you think of, and begin to find adjectives that describe the organization, and go through some exercises with people within your organization, and have what will become, in the tech industry, we call them word clouds, but there are things that will jump out, stand out. And then once you understand that, begin looking at content strategies that other people in your industry or offering are using. Don't be ashamed of looking at what someone else is doing that they're doing well, and then picking it apart and duplicating what you can duplicate from an existing marketing strategy, or at least what you can extrapolate from what it appears others are doing with content marketing in your industry. So it can be very cost intensive, because to do a content market, the actual content marketing itself may require a host of things that cost money. But today, the cost of doing content marketing online, whether you're doing direct promotion through clicks and AdWords and ads in social media, or whether you're being promoted on, what's the word I'm looking for, on affiliate sites, there may be a cost that's associated with it. But when compared to conventional marketing expenses of putting up a billboard or doing other things, the value proposition is far greater. And so I wouldn't look at this and help those in your marketing teams, if you have them, understand that what they've put in the yellow pages historically and what cost burden there was then, or on a billboard or in some other conventional way, that you can get a lot more bang for your buck, especially being able to quantify your reach, conversions, and those sorts of things. I hope that answered that.
I think so. I'll just add something briefly to it as well. And I think that Jonathan's completely correct. It can be costly. The value prop is better, in my opinion. But you could also look at a different way, which is, rather than creating a comprehensive corporate-wide content strategy, look at a specific segment or a specific product that you might have and implement the strategy with that group, where you won't need as much content, and do it as a trial. And so start a little bit smaller where it is digestible for you and the team, get it out there, and see if it doesn't promote that certain line better than the others, and where you find success with it, slowly roll it out to the whole company. I think that would accomplish two things, which is one, you're able to get going on content strategy, but B, the organization sees the value of the process and will help you get the resources that you need to deliver a more comprehensive strategy. And so I think on both sides, content strategy is something you can start right away, big or small, no matter how many are on your team, but it's just how you plan to move forward with it. And so consider that as you go forward.
Excellent thought.
One other question here is, I get this question a lot, and not sure we're going to be able to answer it, but the question is, how do you get your content to go viral? Jonathan, have you ever had anything go viral?
Yeah, we've had some success with that, and part of the challenge is virility is generally jump-started by, and I say this generally because there's often no rhyme or reason as to why something becomes viral. But some things that become viral are viral because of their edgy nature, because it's fresh, it's new, it's edgy. Well, that may not be your brand, and that's okay. You don't want to sell out your brand just in hopes that you can become viral. But I think if we could answer that, we wouldn't be on a webinar. We'd be on Grand Cayman with our feet up on a lounge chair. Everyone is trying to figure this out, and there are certain things about the way, and when you're in your content development, think about what will intrigue this audience, and create your content, whether it's the titles, whether it's the angle that you're taking on something, to position you in a way that it could be viral. And that helps. It's going to give you a greater opportunity of something going viral than just putting out something that's quite stale. But I think all of us who are marketers wish we had that golden ticket and could hit it every time. In the case of the success at Blendtec, it was because of the reasons that I've mentioned. Some of the things that we did well for the church that were viral in nature were topical and title driven. So just keep those things in mind and be creative in the content creation process.
Yep,
and try it. Dustin said what I really loved, and this is so much of this is trial and error.
Yeah.
Always be testing, always be trying things, and as long as you're attentive and you're not just throwing something out there never to look at it again, look and see what's working and what's not, and that's going to help you better understand your audience, who your customers are, and it's going to help you craft your messaging moving forward.
A great thought. We also on our end have not heard the secret formula for making something viral, but if any of those of you out there have something that's gone viral, think you have it, we'd love to hear it. So tweet at us or let us know what your viral campaign was and what you think made it happen. The next question here is, how does content affect SEO? I don't know, do you want to take that, Phil, or?
Well, so it's interesting. From an SEO perspective, you'll find that content affects it more so than ever because of the way that Google has begun to understand the value of companies and what they provide to organizations. You can't fake it anymore, and quality content has now become the most highly desired, parts of most SEO campaigns. Companies that have had in-house SEO teams or have hired agencies are now looking to agencies to not only help provide and guide content creation, but then promote and distribute excellent content. And so it's really become, a piece, speaking of, things going viral, a well-designed piece of content that's then well-promoted and published in the right places can have as much about things going viral than almost anything else, in the amount of links that you can get that are of quality, that have a major impact on your SEO. You can do that through one or two quality pieces of content almost better than anything else. So in today's world with content, we found that having 2 or 3 top-notch pieces of content that are reshared and published, dozens and dozens and hundreds of times far outweighs developing, 100 to 200 spammy SEO-related blog posts or pieces of content that will never get off the ground. So think about that in today's age and with how Google has shifted, SEO and content, their relationship is, highly sought-after content that can be reshared and published and promoted in multiple sources will pay dividend after dividend, more so than just quantity.
And you would need to ask yourself, Phil, I hope you don't mind me interjecting here.
Go ahead.
Ask yourself, relative to the nature of your business, can I be the authority on this topic? And you need to be honest, because in many cases the answer is no. They're the fish way too big on a particular topic to be the authority on that from an SEO perspective that's going to rank you at number 1. But what's also important to recognize is, as Phil touched on, the dynamic nature of this algorithm that is Google, that is people are constantly trying to reverse engineer and figure it out for commercial benefit, is so dynamic that it understands each of us individually, and its whole purpose is to provide us with a unique search experience. Meaning, when we first started doing this, the search experience that Phil would have, and Dustin would have, and I would have, and all of you would have, would almost be exactly the same if we punched in the same key term. Not any longer. Now, whether it's from crunching our emails to the public-facing social behaviors that it is constantly harvesting data to personalize an experience, content is never been more important in the way that you create content. That you're creating content that is bite-sized enough that it can be shared, but then points back to the sort of articles and rich content that Phil is talking about that live on a website. So you can become more authoritative. And within your market, you may not be the 800-pound gorilla. You may not be the broad universal authority on a topic, but you can be locally. So with Google looking at localized searches more than ever before and identifying if I search for piano and it knows that my internet protocol is in Utah, it's going to present for me piano places that are in Utah. So think about that in the way you create your content. Are you creating localized content if you have a localized market? Because if you are, you stand a greater chance to be a local authority on the specific topic. Where it may not be important that you rank number 1 for golf. Leave that to people who have tens of millions of dollars of marketing and advertising budgets. But you can be a golf provider in the state of Utah if you're curating the right sort of content, both for social as well as for more evergreen stuff. Thanks, Phil.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. I think you can take that same point and apply it to your AdWords and cross-campaigns. So I think everybody out there should take note of what Jonathan just said and actually use that in many different channels, even beyond content. Next question. Is there a tool that can be used to distribute content and listen to engagements? I'll actually go ahead and take that myself. There are a number of tools out there. Just to list off of a few: Hootsuite, Octopus. There is, I'm just trying to think of them. Jonathan, throw them out there if you got them.
Yeah, I've got a few. Go ahead. Keep mentioning your list.
Mention, Talkwalker, Topsy. What about you, John?
I'm going to give just a few that could be used. They're not as well known, but as you think about your content strategy, if your business is small enough to where people are following you when you tweet, they're following you in social, they're following you on a blog, there's a site called If This, it's not a site, it's an app, If This Then That. And you can control, it's really, really cool. You can control what you're presenting and where it delivers and how it delivers. Meaning that if I do this, that is going to occur. If I do this, then it's going to post to that particular social platform and that particular social platform. And you basically build in the model for how you want it to deliver your messaging across social. There's one that's similar to if this and that called Zapier, that's more business related, where IFTTT is more specifically geared toward interpersonal relationships, but you can certainly promote it from a business perspective if you have followers. Zapier is Z-A-P-I-E-R. It has business-related kind of automated features. And then, Buffer's been around in social publishing. I think the most prominent one, if you're looking at something to blanket social with, would be Hootsuite that he mentioned, where you can control time and place of where you want things distributed. But find something that works for you. There are so many of these apps that exist, and every day there's more that are coming out. Explore them, find one that you think works for your business, and try a variety of them to see which are working for you.
I would agree with that, and we can get out a list of it, but it's almost just as easy. You can just search, social media listening tools. You'll get an entire range of them, and to Jonathan's point, find the one that's right for you guys, as some of them are comprehensive across every social channel, whereas others like TweetDeck is going to be specific to Twitter. So what is it that you need, and find that right tool. Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to mention one more thing that's so critical in the creation of content. Historically, especially if you're a brand of prominence or an organization of prominence, the attitude was, you need to come through our big brass doors. You come through our website portal, or you don't find us, excuse me, you don't find us at all. And I think today we need to realize that there are so many portals for access that if we ignore a variety of portals simply because we say, well, we're going to discount Twitter. I don't like Twitter. I'm not on Twitter. Therefore, I'm going to write it off. Or we hear about our kids are on Snapchat, our kids are on Vine, and it just has no place for me. Yet, depending on if you really understand your audience, and it could be broad enough, don't force your audience to live where you insist they live. All you're doing is congesting the conversion funnel. Provide opportunities, access points, portholes, doors, windows, crawl spaces for people to access your brand. And it may be that causes you as a marketing team to look more specifically, should we be on something like Snapchat? Should we be encouraging it? Should we have the badge under our social? And should we be creating stories each day for people to follow because we have a brand that people or a service that they're interested in, or they're interested in an executive, or whatever the case might be. But just don't be quick to discount access points to your brand or to your service, and be thinking of that in a broader content strategy.
Couldn't agree more. I do have to mention when I leave the office, if it's after 5 p.m., my if, then, and that will send a message to my girlfriend saying I'm on my way home. So that tool has a lot of functions, and something I think you guys should take a look at. I will also do a shameless plug here for a listening tool, and that's for any type of marketing automation software. Marketing automation is built to listen, and depending on the automation program that you take, you can listen to most all of the major social channels. The other nice thing about it is it's actually going to distribute content on your behalf in a scheduled and automated way. And so for those companies out there that are large enough, and you don't have to be huge by any means, you're often looking somewhere, maybe $500 to $1,500 a month in a spend. But it can become, it can make your organization turn one person into feeling like it's 4 or 5 people. Just through the automated and scheduled processes that it allows. And so that's something I think every organization should be looking at as well. All right, our last question goes to you, Jonathan. Can Jonathan give an example of how his company has used Twitter as a content distribution channel?
Yes. You're naturally limited by character, and I spoke of brevity before. One of the challenges with anything in social media is gaining an audience if you don't already have one that's built in. Meaning if you're not a superhero, you're not the Kardashians, I still cannot figure out why people are interested in them, but nevertheless they are. If you're not one of those people, how do you gain an audience? And so you, as it relates to your content strategy, need to be thoughtful about, is Twitter your right audience? And you can try it. Now, Twitter being a public-facing social platform, what you're producing gives you a world-of-mouth audience. You have a broad reach in the things that you're presenting. Now, there are ways in which you can start developing some audiences around Twitter. But what I've done, let me just give you an example of what we've done in encouraging the use of Twitter relative to the advice that I offer to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Twice a year, semi-annually, they have their general conference of the church. And we started years ago with what we called, the hashtag was Twitter stake. And a stake in the church is a defined geographical area of membership. So we, with others who had interest in technology, started using this hashtag Twitter stake, and suddenly it took off and it began to trend on Twitter. Now, it was unique enough that there were enough people who were members of the church who would be tuned into conference where we had suggested that you use this and you share snippets of interesting discussions or talks or things. But to actually trend on the homepage of Twitter was a significant milestone. Now, almost without exception, on those 2 weekends, twice a year, LDS Conf, which is the church's now official hashtag, will trend, which has replaced the Twitter stake. Now, there are other examples of success on Twitter, but Twitter, like any other social platform, is not a guaranteed hit if what you're offering isn't compelling, if what you're offering is just ordinary. And again, unless you're one of these superstar people, they say stupid things all day long and people seem to consume it like crazy. But that's an exception. That's not the rule. And so within your business, you need to look and decide within yourself, is Twitter where my audience, are they going to be following the sort of content that I'm producing on Twitter? Have that be your first discussion and then try it out. You'll have the badge, you'll have the thumbnail on your homepage or in other places, but is it getting traction? Are you using emails to encourage people to go to Twitter if you're preferring to use Twitter as a microblog? Because that's really what Twitter is it's a microblog. You're just telling a story with fewer characters and you're doing it more often. But what you can do to go back to using Hootsuite is to create something that allows you to more broadly send messages that can be shared across multiple platforms, even Twitter, that aren't going to require you to have to create individual messaging time and time and time again throughout the day. I hope that answers that question.
No, I think that's a fantastic answer. Thank you. That's our final question, and once again, we want to say thank you. I want to thank Jonathan Johnson. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. On behalf of Jonathan Johnson, the CEO of More Good Foundation and co-founder of Link LMS, my name is Dustin Cederholm. I'm the Digital Conversion Manager at Fluid. And for Phil Case, the Managing Director and partner here at Fluid, we'd like to thank you for attending another Fluid webinar series. We'll see you guys next month.